All right, so now that we've done long division of polynomials, we're going to go over a new process of division for us called synthetic division. This is a process that simplifies dividing a polynomial by a linear expression x plus a. So it does have to be linear. It has to start with just x. The coefficient has to be 1. There cannot be an exponent. But we divide a polynomial by that linear expression by checking for the solution negative a, which does mean we have to remember to reverse the sign with part of this. So I've got the steps written down here. We're going to follow those along to divide x to the third minus 14x squared plus 51x minus 54 by x plus 2. So our first step is to reverse the sign of the constant in the divisor and box it in the top left corner. So if we follow along there, reverse the sign of the constant in the divisor. So the constant was 2. So I'm going to put a negative 2 in a box in the top left-hand corner of my work. Next, write the coefficients of the polynomial, including any zeros. So that's very important if you remember when we did long division. If we skipped a degree term, like if we didn't have a quadratic term, we would write a 0x squared in that place. So make sure you look for every possible term and include the zeros. And we'll do an example including that to make sure we see that. So write the coefficients. So we start with x to the third. The coefficient of that is 1. Remember, if there's not a number written there, that is 1x to the third. Then we go from the cubic down to the quadratic is negative 14. Then the linear is 51, and the constant is negative 54. So now we've got those written out. Next, drop the first coefficient. So we're going to use a few lines here. I'm going to skip one there and drop the number 1 right here. I'll go ahead and make like a bar there for separation. And then the last step is really going to be a process that gets us through to the end. Multiply the coefficient by the number in the box. Then add that product to the next coefficient and repeat until we're done. So multiply that coefficient by the number in the box. 1 multiplied by negative 2 gives me negative 2. Then we're going to add that to the next coefficient here. So if we combine those, negative 14 plus negative 2 is negative 16. Then we're going to keep this process going. So now we're going to multiply this number by the number in the box. So negative 16 times negative 2 is positive 32. Then we're going to combine these. 51 and 32 make 83. And then we're going to multiply these. 83 times negative 2 is negative 166. And when we combine those together, we get negative 220. So now we just have to take these coefficients and put them into an answer. So if we were to divide x to the third by x, that would be x squared. So we should have a quadratic here. You could also work backwards. So this number is your remainder. The one next is the constant, then the linear term. So this is a quadratic. So we've got 1x squared minus 16x plus 83. And then I'm just going to write this as a remainder of negative 220. And that is our answer. So when we divide those polynomials, they do not divide out evenly. X plus 2 is not a factor of this cubic. Negative 2 is not a 0 of that polynomial, but this is our quotient. So now that we've done this once with that process written out, let's do 2 more examples with that going a little bit faster. See if we'll get used to it. So example 6. X to the third plus 7x squared minus 38x minus 240 divided by, I should have this in parentheses just to be right, x plus 5. So if we remember, the first step is to reverse the sign of the constant and box it in the top left corner. So it was a 5 here, it's a negative 5 here. Next, we're going to write out all of our coefficients. We have 1x to the third 7x squared, negative 38x, and negative 240 for my constant. There are no zero coefficients there. We have all of our terms in place. Next, we're going to drop this 1 and start that chain of multiplying and adding. So 7 plus negative 5 is 2. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Negative 38 plus negative 10 is negative 48. Negative 48 times negative 5 is positive 240. Feel free to use a calculator. You don't have to go through that in your head. Absolutely not. And then we get 0. So that means our remainder is going to be 0. Again, if you know what you're doing, x to the third divided by x means this is a quadratic. Remainder, constant, linear, quadratic. So our answer is x squared plus 2x minus 48. So that, for most people, is a little bit faster than long division. Most people prefer this way of working this out. And again, if there's no remainder, that means this actually is a factor. Negative 5 is a 0 for that polynomial. And we could say that x plus 5 times the quantity x squared plus 2x minus 48 is equivalent to that cubic. Okay, one final example. Let's divide x to the fifth minus 2x cubed minus x squared minus 2 by x minus 3. So opposite sign in the corner, so a positive 3. Then we're going to write out our coefficients. We have 1 x to the fifth. Remember to look for zeros. So we do not have any x to the fourth terms, so I have to put a 0 in there. We do have x to the third, that's negative 2. We do have x squared, that's negative 1. We don't have x, so I need another 0, and my constant is negative 2. So we've got a lot of coefficients in this one. Then I'm going to drop the first coefficient and start multiplying. 1 times 3 is 3. Adding 0 and 3 make 3. Multiplying 3 and 3 is 9. Negative 2 plus 9 is 7. Multiply to get 21. Add that to get 20. Multiply 20 times 3 to get 60. 0 plus 60 is 60. Multiply 3 times 60 to get 180. And we've got 178. So now, if you know what you're doing, x to the fifth divided by x is x to the fourth. So this is a quartic quotient. It's nice and alliterative. We've got a remainder, constant, linear, quadratic, cubic, quartic. So this is 1x to the fourth plus 3x to the third plus 7x squared plus 20x plus 60. And there is a remainder of 178. So that is my answer. And x minus 3 is not a factor of x to the fifth minus 2x to the third minus x squared minus 2.